The Gaza Strip, a narrow sliver of land bordering the Mediterranean Sea, has been a crucible of conflict for decades. The events of October 2023 marked a terrifying new chapter in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Hamas launched a surprise attack against Israel, penetrating the border and leaving hundreds of Israelis dead. Israel responded with a bombing campaign on Gaza, reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble. The international community watched in horror as the death toll mounted. Israel vowed to dismantle Hamas's military infrastructure. Hamas framed its actions as a response to decades of Israeli occupation and blockade. The conflict escalated, dragging in neighboring countries and raising fears of a wider regional war. Despite international calls for a ceasefire, the fighting raged on. The conflict exposed the fault lines in the region, with Arab nations divided and global powers struggling to find common ground. By the time a fragile ceasefire was brokered in February 2024, thousands of lives had been lost, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza had been pushed to the breaking point. The February 2024 ceasefire brought a temporary lull in the fighting, but the underlying tensions remained unresolved. Negotiations for a more lasting agreement faltered, hampered by mistrust and a lack of political will on both sides. Hamas, though weakened militarily, remained defiant, its grip on Gaza seemingly unshaken. Israel, meanwhile, faced growing international criticism for the high civilian death toll of its military operation and its continued blockade of Gaza. In March 2025, the fragile peace shattered. A series of violent incidents along the border, including rocket fire from Gaza and Israeli airstrikes, quickly escalated into a full-blown conflict. Each side blamed the other for violating the ceasefire, and the cycle of violence resumed with a vengeance. The international community, weary from years of failed mediation efforts, seemed powerless to stop the bloodshed. The renewed fighting brought with it a chilling sense of déjà vu. Once again, rockets rained down on Israeli cities, sending civilians scrambling for shelter. And once again, Gaza was pounded by Israeli airstrikes, its already shattered infrastructure crumbling further under the onslaught. The death toll climbed rapidly, surpassing the grim milestones of the previous year's conflict. The human cost of the conflict is staggering. The Gaza Strip, home to over 2 million Palestinians, is one of the most densely populated places in the world. Years of conflict and blockade have left its infrastructure in ruins, its economy in tatters, and its people mired in poverty and despair. The repeated rounds of fighting have only exacerbated this already dire humanitarian crisis. The Israeli blockade, in place since 2007, has severely restricted the flow of goods and people into and out of Gaza. The blockade has been condemned by human rights groups as collective punishment, and its impact on Gaza's economy and society has been devastating. The lack of essential goods, including food, fuel, and medical supplies, has created a chronic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Malnutrition is rampant, particularly among children. The healthcare system is on the verge of collapse, lacking essential medicines and equipment. The water supply is contaminated, and sanitation systems are overwhelmed. The people of Gaza are trapped in a cycle of poverty, violence, and despair. Section 4. A world-divided international response and inaction. The international community has long been engaged in efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but these efforts have yielded few tangible results. The two-state solution, once seen as the most viable path to peace, seems increasingly elusive. The international community remains divided on how to address the underlying issues driving the conflict, including the status of Jerusalem, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and the expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. The latest round of fighting has sparked international condemnation, but it has also exposed the limitations of international diplomacy. The United States, Israel's closest ally, has blocked efforts at the United Nations Security Council to impose a ceasefire or condemn Israeli actions. Other world powers have called for restraint and dialogue, but their pleas have gone largely unheeded. The International Criminal Court, or ICC, is currently investigating allegations of war crimes committed by both sides during the conflict. However, Israel has refused to cooperate with the ICC, and it is unclear whether any individuals will ultimately be held accountable for their actions. Section 5. Beyond the Rubble, the Long Road to Peace. As the conflict grinds on, hope for a peaceful resolution seems to dwindle with each passing day. The two sides remain locked in a deadly embrace, fueled by mutual mistrust and historical grievances. The international community watches, offering words of condemnation but little action. Yet amidst the rubble there are glimmers of hope. Some refuse to give up on peace, building bridges of understanding. The road to peace is long, but it must be taken.